All right, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm really excited to be presenting to you here today on honestly one of my favorite topics, which is the 6 pillars of sales persuasion. You heard a little bit of my background. Master's degree was in sports psychology, started working with athletes, and now have kind of transitioned some of those same mental principles and the principles of psychology to how we can all get better results in our lives personally and professionally. And even though I started out working with athletes, quite honestly, I've been in sales really all of my life. I would say for more than 20 plus years. And I've always been fascinated by this topic, the psychology of sales persuasion. Why do we do what we do? Why do we buy what we buy? Why are some people such great influencers and kind of persuaders? And what really are the distinguishing characteristics that allow us to be able to do that? And I've got a ton of information I need to get through over the next 45 to 50 minutes. And I guarantee it is going to be beneficial for you. So as I get started here, I mean, the first thing that I want to say is a lot of what I'm going to talk about is based on this book called Influence. And hopefully some of you are familiar with it. If you're not, it's one of those books that I would, I don't typically force feed books to people, but it's one of those books that I would say every single person should read, especially if you're interested in this topic. It's Influenced by Robert Cialdini. The book is actually going on almost 30 years old, but the principles of why we buy and what makes people persuasive and what we respond to are all covered in this book. And really, what I'm going to go through today is based on kind of the fundamentals of these principles with kind of a little bit of my new age spin on it and kind of some of my takes. But I always just want to give him credit where credit is due. And kind of one of the questions that I get whenever I'm presenting on this topic, and one thing that I want to get out there to all of you is that when we talk about persuasion, I do not want you to confuse that with manipulation. And I sometimes believe that you can't say the right thing to the wrong person, and you also can't say the wrong thing to the right person. What we're really talking about when we're talking about persuasion is if you've got the right potential customers and the leads and the people in front of you, what we're really talking about with persuasion is we are just convincing them of an action that we want them to take that they are already, let's say 60, 70, 80, maybe 90% of the way to taking. So in other words, it's not, it is helping to continue to push people towards a decision, but it is not taking the complete wrong person. And sometimes when people lump in persuasion with manipulation, using some of the slimy and sleazy sales tactics that we've probably all heard of, where you're trying to get someone to do something in different ways that they may really not even want to do. And whatever short-term gain that ends up giving you, it usually ends up leading to long-term pain, and it's not a good thing. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, is really what you're doing is you're just taking things, you're just helping people along that are the right people for you. And one of the questions that I always ask is, anytime, especially if I'm speaking to a live group, because I do that a lot, is I say, how many of you genuinely believe that your product or program or idea or service can benefit others? And of course, every single person in the room raises their hand. And then I say, okay, well, then it's incumbent upon us all to actually be as persuasive as possible in what we're doing, because you have something of benefit to put out there in the world. So hopefully that makes sense. And the only other thing that I'll say before I launch into the first pillar is, as I go through these 6 different things, a lot of them are going to hit home, and a lot of them you're going to look at and you're going to say, yeah, I'm doing that already. And I'm guessing a lot of them, to a point, you probably will be doing. But what I can promise you is that after this presentation, if you start to look at them more strategically and more intentionally, I actually guarantee it will help your sales results, because these are the reasons that people buy. And a lot of times we just hear, well, I should run sales, or I should demonstrate social proof and different things like that. And we don't really strategically think about why we are doing that. And this really goes into the science underneath why we buy and why we do certain things throughout the sales process. So without further ado, let's go into the first pillar. And the first pillar is simply, Cialdini actually called it likability, but I call it the BLT. Now, I'm coming to you live here from Denver, Colorado in the United States. And here in the States, when we hear BLT, we typically think of the sandwich, bacon, lettuce, and tomato. But in sales, the BLT to me means we will buy and we will be persuaded by those that we believe, like, and trust. And really, before I even go into how do we create belief and some different things, I think the first thing that we have to make sure that we're doing is we have to make a strong and we have to make a good first impression. So that really leads me to the first poll question of how long do you think it takes for us to form a first impression? Go ahead and just enter your answer there in the poll question. All right, just a couple more seconds and I'll close it down. How long does it take for us to form a first impression? All right, we have got some smart sales outperformers here on the webinar. It is actually, I've heard some people say 5 seconds. I've heard some say 7. I typically go with 7, but that is the correct answer. It's a very short period of time. 7 seconds or 5 seconds, either way, we form first impressions very fast of when we meet people face to face, when people visit our website. And I always just start with this because honestly, if we're not really looking at the first impression part of it, to me, we're fighting an uphill battle the rest of the way. So let's just say that you're meeting with someone face to face and you're going to focus on that first impression. Well, as simplistic as it really sounds, and many things in life are, when we look at how can we form a good first impression, it is typically made up by the 3 things of just a simple smile, a good, firm, strong handshake, letting people know that you're confident, and making some amount of eye contact. And again, when you look at that 7 seconds, they're probably forming, I'm not talking anything about what you actually say to someone, because we're probably forming that first impression, good or bad or otherwise, of that person before the first word even comes out of your mouth. So I always start there, and this is obviously if you're meeting someone face to face, but I would also think about when someone visits your website, which to me is another, it's a 21st century, the virtual introduction to someone. When someone visits your website, what is the first impression that they get? Like within seconds. And I'm not talking about when they read the first, bullet pointed article or when they watch the video. I'm talking literally about the feel of it, the font, the colors, the layout, everything else. We have to pay attention to those first impressions because if we don't make good ones, we're fighting an uphill battle. So that's the first impression part. And really, when we're talking about how we are persuaded by those that we believe, like, and trust, the belief part of it, if people are going to buy from you, they need to have belief in 3 things, or you need to believe in 3 things. And the first one is you have to believe in yourself. Sometimes I will show a slide where I just looked at, I Googled the phrase I Googled the phrase traits of top performing business leaders. And what I did is I took all of the top 20 results on Google and I plugged them into a word cloud. And far and away, the biggest one, the biggest trait of outperformers in business was confidence. And it's just one of those things that when people perceive you to be a confident person and that you have belief in yourself, they're more likely to buy from you. So as simple as it sounds, posture is one of those things. Like if you are actually sitting up tall, if you are standing up tall, believe it or not, this all really affects your tonality. Whether you're meeting with someone face to face or whether you have a call or a Skype with someone, people are going to be able to read that from you, just as far as your belief in yourself based on your posture. So that's the first thing. You got to have belief in yourself. Second thing, you have to have belief in whatever your product or program or service happens to be. You have to believe that that's something that is either going to reinforce gain or give someone some type of benefit, or it's going to reduce a customer's pain. Like, it's just one of those things, and you have to be able to convey that. And then the third thing, after belief in yourself and belief in your product, program, or service, is the belief in your company. And this can just be something as simple as, even if your company hasn't been around for a long period of time, what's the background of the company? You know, Kirthi talked about Zoho and their mission and why they do what they do and who they're trying to help. All of those things, whether we're talking about a mission or a vision or values or a background or a company history, all of those things, if you stack up the trifecta of belief in yourself, belief in whatever your product, program, or service is, as well as belief in the company as a whole, that is a strong way to lead off the BLT. Second part, you got to be likable. All things being equal, we typically buy from people that we like, and all things not being equal, we still buy from people that we like. So it begs the question, how do we become more likable? Well, one of the simplest ways is, it was a principle of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? Seek first to understand, then to be understood. We have a deep fundamental need to feel like we are understood as people. Like, people get what it is like to walk in our shoes. And when you are able to do this, whether it's the copy on your website or whether it's you talking to someone throughout the sales cycle, when you're able to put yourself there and use language and say things like, I know what it's like to be you right now. Like, I know what it's like to be at this stage in your business. I know how difficult it is to generate traffic and high quality sales leads. I know how time consuming it can be to be able to go through the current CRM you have, and that's why you should look at our option. It's actually saying, I really get and I can demonstrate that empathy and I can relate to where you are and what you need. When you do that, it is the single best way for you to be not only more relatable, but more likable to any customer or any prospect. And then the last part is to build trust. And trust, if I were to just ask you, how do you build trust? Well, trust is really one of those things that is only truly built over time. And quite honestly, it's doing whatever you say you'll do when. And this can start immediately with someone in the first interaction. If you say you are going to call them on a specific date and time, you call them on that date or time. If you say you are going to send them an email or send them a proposal at this time and date, you do those things. And trust is something that's continually being either built or destroyed throughout the sales process. And it's a critical component to it, because it's the final part of that BLT, the belief, likability, and trust, that we absolutely have to have. We will do business with people that we trust. And to cap this off, I'm always going to try and share just examples of either my own personal stories or what's going out there in the real world. And you can probably see the giant Apple logo on the screen right now, but I just think about it. For the longest time, I've used Apple products, and I really like them. I think I've had them since probably an iPhone 4. I'm doing this presentation right now on a MacBook Air, and they've built a lot of good trust over the years. But I look at the last 3 products that I've purchased from the company, and not to put down Apple, but I purchased an Apple Watch that ended up breaking down after 2 months. I purchased an Apple HomePod that was dysfunctional right out of the box and had to be sent back in. And I purchased a set of Apple AirPods, or headphones, that I had to send back in twice, actually, to get them to work. And I had to bring them into an Apple store to get a firmware update. So when you look at these things, and when I just go back to this slide of building trust in something that's continually being built or destroyed, and I share that example, I don't know at what point I might say, okay, you've broken my trust enough in what I believe your products, the quality of it, and what they are supposed to do, to the point that I'm actually going to go to another competitor. But we are always either building trust throughout what we say we'll do, or what we say our products or our programs or services will do, and then the results that they actually deliver. So I hope that makes sense. And that's the first pillar. And the second pillar, when we go to it, is the pillar of scarcity and urgency. Now, I just happen to have, I travel a good amount for my job, and I happen to have a slide of Southwest Airlines up here. So when we look at scarcity, scarcity is when there is not a lot of something, right? It's limited inventory, limited time. And I just have the slide of a limited time sale. There's only so much of it. It's scarce, it's rare. And because of that, we deem it more valuable. The next slide, I'm sure you've probably been on something like this. If you've ever booked a flight, whether you're booking it directly through an airline or Orbitz or Expedia or whatever it happens to be, and you've seen something like the little green box below the select buttons on the top left and the bottom right, where you see one left at this price or two left at this price. Well, that's a form of urgency that's basically saying you better book now or you are going to lose it, because it's kind of a combination of scarcity and urgency, but there's only this amount left at this price for you to be able to get it. So let's go into kind of things separately. All right, to persuade with scarcity. Now, you might be looking at it and you might be out there. I know that I had someone that asked about software in the last webinar. So you might look at it, you might say, well, Scott, I don't have a limited amount of software, and necessarily. So how do I make that scarce? Well, the scarcity in all of what we offer, our products, programs, services, comes from the uniqueness of them. Maybe you've heard USP, unique selling proposition, but it comes from your own kind of secret sauce. Or if I were to just ask product, program, service you represent, what is it in that makes it unique and makes it different? Because if you look at the scarce things in our society that we really deem valuable, diamonds, cars, hotels, maybe airlines, just different things that have status, they have found a way to make it unique and make it different than anything else. So really think about whatever you have, what makes it unique. And at the bottom, I do just want to emphasize no false scarcity. I see this on the internet sometimes where maybe people will be running a webinar, or let's use this example. They'll say that they have a PDF download of their ebook, okay? It's a PDF download. It's an ebook that lives online. And they will say there are only 500 copies available, so you better get it now. Well, I'm sorry, but the customer is not stupid. Like, there's an unlimited number of these available, and you can't just use false scarcity by telling someone that there's a limited time sale or a limited quantity if it's not actually a limited time sale and not actually a limited quantity. I started talking about trust before, and if you want to know the quickest way to break trust, it's by using false scarcity, because then when people come back on that site a couple of weeks afterwards, when you told them it was a limited time and they see the same thing showing up, they've just called your bluff, and you've just broken their trust. And then the second part, to persuade with urgency. Now, urgency is typically a time-based thing, and it usually creates FOMO, or what we call fear of missing out. And it's basically, if you are going to do business with me, or if you are going to make this purchase, we typically respond more psychologically in terms of persuasion to what will be taken away from us or what we'll miss out on, rather than sometimes what we'll actually have or what we'll gain from something. So if I'm going to do business with you and I'm going to invest in your software, what is the reason that I must act now? And if I don't act now, what is that going to cost me in my business going forward if I don't take that action? And one of the biggest things with urgency is if you're going to create urgency, you have to actually make it relevant to what people want. And I bring up this example because every single person on this webinar can relate to Amazon. I mean, they're the 900 billion-pound gorilla, I think is their valuation in the room right now. I mean, it's crazy. And Amazon, you can look at it from a scarcity standpoint. You can also look at it from an urgency standpoint. At the bottom of the slide, you see if you want it tomorrow, July 3rd, where I just got this slide from Google Images, but you have to order within the next 9 hours and 32 minutes to get 1 day shipping. All right. It's a simple way to do it, right? We've got that urgency of you have to order it in this time period. Up by the green in stock underneath free shipping, a lot of times you'll also see that there are only so many available. Now, what allows Amazon to be phenomenally successful with this is basically everybody sells on Amazon, and it's really become a search engine where you can find highly relevant things to what you want, which is why they can add in sometimes the scarcity and certainly the urgency and kind of preying on our instant gratification where we want things now, because it's highly relevant to what people actually want. So I say that insofar as you can't just take someone and if they're really not the right person for you, or you really haven't identified them as an ideal client or an ideal customer, and think that if you just make things scarce or just add in a time component to make it urgent, that they're going to buy, because you won't create that fear of missing out. People just quite honestly aren't that concerned about, well, I'm going to miss out on this thing, if that makes sense. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the pillar of social proof, which also brings us to our second poll question. And the best way to persuade with social proof is to which of the following? You can either tell success stories of similar people, you can use logical facts and data, or you can highlight testimonials. Go ahead and enter your answers in the poll box. Couple more seconds. All right, let's take a look at the results. So once again, you are all very successful, persuasive sales outperformers, because we've got tell success stories of similar people at 53%, and that is indeed the correct answer. The highlight testimonials part at the end, that is actually a component of social proof, but I'll explain in a second why you actually have to go just a little bit beyond that and why any testimonial won't work. So let's jump back in and let's say, okay, when we're looking at social proof, what we're basically saying is we are saying if it worked for them, it will work for me too. That is underneath all of what we do. That's our baseline psychology of how we look at things. If I show you a satisfied customer review or a testimonial or anything else, and we see someone that is very similar to us, which is why that it can't just be any random testimonial. It has to actually be a testimonial or a satisfied customer or a review of someone that we can relate to. If we see that, we are then going to say to ourselves, if it worked for them, it will work for me too. And this in sales, maybe you've heard the line, facts tell, stories sell. We buy emotionally. There are so many different studies and so many different things that show this, that we will make our buying decisions based on emotion, and we will justify them after the fact with logic. And that's why telling a story of, you know what, I help this customer do this thing that is just like you. And then you say to yourself, wow, if you help this customer do this thing and they are just like me, you are probably going to help me do the same exact thing. And that story triggers that emotional reaction. And then if you want to layer on some of the facts and some of the data and some of the logical kind of reasoning, well, now all of a sudden you've got a home run. But that story of kind of that social proof and how we want to do what other people are doing and be a part of that is part of the psychology of persuasion. So what does this look like? Okay, let's just take I believe it was the number one selling fitness program of all time, P90X. I believe it still is. But quite honestly, you can use this with any fitness program that you've ever seen out there. If you've seen an infomercial, what you are going to see is you're going to see a number of different testimonials. And you are going to see testimonials of people that are of different ages, of different genders, of different races, of different ethnicities. And the reason that they do this is because they want people out there to be able to look at someone and to be able to say, wow, if that person got results doing this thing, if they did it, if it worked for them, it will work for me too. It's also part of the reason that if you ever watched an infomercial, you will typically have somebody leading maybe the exercise, and then you will have 2 or 3 other people doing different variations of the exercise at different kind of intensity or difficulty levels. And they do that, again, for the very specific reason of other people being able to look at it and being able to say, okay, I can relate to this person, and I see that social proof as far as what they're doing. So testimonials, great. Highly relevant ones is absolutely key. I also had your reviews here. I mean, I think about a lot of the ways, and I'm sure you can probably relate to this. Like if my girlfriend and I are going to go out for dinner, or if we're going to go somewhere, we will typically go and we will look up the reviews for any given place, whether it's on Yelp or otherwise, and we will see what other people are saying. That is another simple way to look at social proof. And we look at it, we say, okay, if this person had a really good experience and it worked for them, then we will have a good experience and it will work for us. So that's the social proof. Pillar number 4 is the pillar of reciprocity. And I know that these are big in the US. This is a picture of Costco right now, but if you've ever walked into a grocery store or a Costco, and you've walked up and someone's been giving out free samples of food, and you've walked up and you've gotten a free sample of whatever it is that they're giving out, and you know deep down that you don't really have any intention of buying whatever they're sampling. You just maybe happen to be hungry, or you just want to try it out. So you go up and you have whatever the free sample is. And then as you're walking away from that person that gave you the free sample, you feel a little bit guilty because you didn't buy the box of Ritz crackers, or you didn't buy whatever the person was offering. That little bit of guilt that you have, and that little bit of feeling bad that I didn't give this person something back when they gave something to me, is the pillar of reciprocity. That's how it works. And we look at it as, you gave me something, now I want to give you something back in return. It is again one of the pillars of persuasion. And I think about it, it was just a couple of months ago that I started leasing a new vehicle. And when I walk into the dealership, the first thing they ask me, it's not, what are you looking at? You know, what are you interested in? What are you driving now? What they do is they offer me a bottle of water, and then they offered me a sandwich or a cookie. You know, and it might sound like something that's really simple, and well, Scott, what does that matter? But believe it or not, just the simple act of giving someone something right off the bat, there is that little voice in the back of all of our heads that says, okay, wow, you gave me something, now I kind of want to give you something back in return. And I think it's absolutely key. And this can go in the form of just a favor that you do for someone. It can be information. It can be, I'm not talking about going out and buying someone a new car or anything like that. It can be just very small things where you're providing value for people, but it has a tremendous impact on what they want to give back to you. And as far as what does this look like? I mean, we can come across 10 million different examples of things like this online. Okay, here we've got on this website, we've got free ebook, The Complete Guide to Facebook Ads. All right, so what I am giving you is, this isn't from my site, this is from another site, but I'm going to give you a complete guide to Facebook ads that is supposedly a crash course and will tell me every single thing that I need to be able to get more bang for my buck and to be able to get more out of Facebook ads. Now, in the reciprocity, you have to give me your first name, your email address, and perhaps your business website. But what I'm basically doing is I am giving you this free value as far as what I'm doing. And I will tell you, when I contact businesses that I want to work with or companies that I want to speak for, I really try to do this as much as possible, where I am always leading with value. If I want to work with a sales business, I will almost always lead with, I'm going to give you a free PDF copy of my sales book, or I will just send them a sales book. And then I might send them a video, and then I might send them a podcast that I was interviewed on. And then I will send them an article that talks about maybe what I'm talking about right now. But I will continually give value, or give something that they genuinely want that is kind of preying on this pillar of reciprocity, knowing that the more that I give to someone, the more that they're going to want to give something back to me. So when I coach people and when I work with people on sales persuasion, when we look at reciprocity, the simplest way for you to look at is just what I led off with, where I was talking about free samples. How can you give someone just a little taste, or maybe a little nibble or a little appetizer of whatever it is that you're offering? And then by giving them that and by demonstrating value and results in advance, hopefully they will want to come back and they will want to buy the whole entree. You know, they'll want to show up with their whole family and they'll want to have the complete meal. That's how you're looking at reciprocity. Pillar number 5 is the pillar of authority. And the reason that I have the white lab coat on here is because you see it all the time, especially on commercials. You see it on some print media, online and whatnot, but certainly on TV. You will see a lot of different commercials of doctors, dentists, or just people in authority, or people in different positions, I should say, and they will be in a white lab coat because for whatever reason, there is something in our minds that when you put someone in a white lab coat, we deem them an authority, or we deem them an expert and kind of a credible source of information. And when we look at that, when we are ever uncertain about anything, we will defer to authorities. And we will say, I'm uncertain what to do. I'm not exactly sure. Please lead me in the right direction. And what does this look like? Well, titles, credentials, education, experiences. I'll deal with website in a second, but this isn't necessarily you standing, on top of the rock, beating your chest, talking about what a great authority you are. It's different ways that down at the bottom, I have the word position underlined. It's how you actually position yourself as an authority and what you do. And I think it's absolutely key, because if we're ever up in the air, I brought up just, the concept of Apple before, where I think about the last computer that I bought. And I just went into, I think I bought it at Best Buy, and I went in, I wasn't sure of exactly what I needed, all the different bells and whistles and whatnot, but I walked in and there was some Geek Squad kid that was working there, and I kind of told him a little bit about it, but I was still a little bit uncertain. But what I was looking for, and what he did phenomenally well, is he said, based on what you're telling me, I'm telling you that this would be the best thing for you. That's my professional opinion. So rather than not making any recommendation or anything like that, he actually presented himself as an authority, and I believed him and liked him and trusted him, and I ended up buying it because of that. And when you look at, I have the word website underlined again, because I think it's so key that when people go on your website, the 21st century business card right now, how are you presenting yourself as an authority on that website? I think a website is something that has to be good these days, and has to demonstrate yourself as an authority. So what are some ways that you can potentially do this? I mean, you've seen a picture in my book in a number of these slides, and as my 50 best tips ever for selling products, ideas, and services. And it's not like I have that on there because I'm trying to puff out my chest and just force feed you my book. But to start with the first thing here in books, we look at anybody that's written a book as someone, well, they must be an expert in their field. They've written the book on it. Like, I can just tell you what it's done for me as a speaker, as a consultant, as a trainer. It's been absolutely amazing. And even if you have a book, great, use that book, position it, leverage it, because it demonstrates that you're an expert or an authority. If you haven't written one, I tend to believe almost anybody in any business should write a book. And even if you don't want to do the full-fledged book, put a PDF book out there, sort of like the Facebook ads one that I showed you before, that is just the definitive guide to whatever it is that you're selling, whatever your industry is, or the definitive guide to sales CRMs, and put that out there, because people will start to link, wow, this person wrote the book on it. They're really an expert or an authority, and I should listen to them. And all of these other things next to books, the videos, the podcasts, the blogs, articles, speaking or events, social posts on LinkedIn, and just content marketing, the more of those things that we have out there, the more people start to look at you as, wow, this person's a force to be reckoned with, and this person is really someone that is sharp, that knows their stuff, and is an authority in the field and in their industry. So that's authority. And the last one, pillar number 6, is the pillar of commitment plus consistency. Now, I'm just going to launch into our third poll question here and ask you folks, which of the following would be examples of a micro commitment on a website? Introducing a $1 trial offer, using live chat, or having a clickable button to learn more? Go ahead and just, now you can't all put having a clickable button to learn more just because you saw it, but which of the following would be examples of micro commitments on a website? Go ahead and answer that, please. Couple more seconds. All right, let's take a look at the results. So maybe many of you put having the clickable button to learn more just because you saw the clickable button on the site that I showed, but actually all of these are different ways of having a micro commitment on your website. Introducing some type of free trial or $1 trial offer, using a live chat to help people answer questions or potential objections, or just having a simple clickable button to learn more on whatever it is that you're doing. And let's just go back to here, because the pillar of commitment and consistency, let's just take this simple page. And this was the page. If I'm going on, I want to buy a pair of Brook Tide sunglasses. All right. This is all that's on the page. Want free shipping on your next order? 2 buttons. Yes, show me the money in green, which again, when we go into colors and websites and things like that, green means good, green means go. So there's a specific reason why that's green. And no, I hate savings and reject this offer. Now, honestly, looking at it, what person is going to click the red button and say, no, I hate savings and reject this offer? They know the majority of people are going to click yes, show me the money. And believe it or not, just clicking on that one button is a simple way to demonstrate a micro commitment by just having them do the one thing. It's just that one action. And really, that's when we look at consistency, commitment and consistency, the first part of it is sales is a series of micro commitments. I talked a lot more about sports in the last webinar, but I'm a big football fan, American football. So we're talking about moving the ball down the field. Like, that's basically what sales is. So you're just moving the ball down the field. And it's actually asking, what is the first step that someone can take with you? And all of us want to make sales. All of us want to ink deals. All of us want to gain customers. But that's sort of like having the Hail Mary pass in football or scoring the really long touchdown. That happens sometimes, but oftentimes what happens is you have to get a couple of first downs first, and you have to continue to move down the field, and you have to focus on just moving the ball and getting someone to take a first step before you can actually have kind of that touchdown after the fact, which is that we all want. And then the second part of this, the consistency part. What are your customers' beliefs and their values? And this gets into the psychology of your customer, and it's totally a topic for another webinar. But when you really look out and when you map out the demographics and the psychographics of your ideal customer and client, what does that look like? And you need to identify those things and then praise them for it, because the consistency part is people want to act consistently with their identity and with how they see themselves. So in other words, I brought up the leasing the car before. All right, if I'm someone that's really eco-friendly and someone that really cares about the planet, when I walk into a dealership, if you know that about me, you're probably not going to sell me a car that runs on gas and gets 13 miles to the gallon, right? What you're actually going to say is you're going to say, Scott, I know you're someone that values eco-friendly vehicles. I know you're someone that cares about Mother Earth. And because you're this person, you should look at this car. This car would be best for you. Or to go back to the Apple example, Scott, I know you're someone that, this isn't actually true, but Scott, I know you're someone that believes in creativity and kind of status with what you do. And because of that, you need the new iPhone XS. You need the newest set of Apple AirPods. I know you're someone who values or believes this. And because of that, that's why my product, program, service is absolutely perfect for you. So that's consistency. And to go into, let's just take a look quickly at the micro commitment part of it. And let's just say I imagine a lot of you probably do email marketing that are on this webinar right now, whether it's cold, warm, hot leads, or any way in between. Let's just say that we're going to do cold email marketing, and I'm going to try to convince you to bring me in to work with your sales team. Okay, well, what's the first thing that I need? The end goal is for you to hire me as a sales trainer. But what's the first thing that I need to get you to do if I'm going to send you a cold email and you don't know who I am? Well, the first thing I need to get you to do is I just need to get you to open up the email, because it's getting harder and harder, and email inboxes are much more congested these days. So I just have to get you to do that. So what is the way that I can get you to make that micro commitment to just open up the email? Well, I need to have a catchy subject line, right? Something that kind of stands out, something that makes you want to open the email. Then what's the next micro commitment from there? Is it to book a meeting or to book a call with me? Well, no, we actually can't do that until you've read the email. So how do I get you to read the email? Well, I better have some type of engaging initial copy or some type of hook right off the bat that gets you to read that entire email. Then what's the next step? Well, get you to book a meeting? Well, yeah, maybe, but what I actually need to get you to do first is I need to probably get you to click a button, because you're not actually going to be able to book a call, book a meeting with me right through the email. You probably have to click a button, sort of like I showed you before, to get redirected to a website to then input the information to be able to make something happen. So I need to have a strong call to action on whatever that button is and why you should click that. Then from that part, I need to get you to actually book the meeting, and to do that, emphasize the value of the benefits. And then after the meeting is booked, I need to make sure that you're going to show up for the meeting. So how do I get you to do that? Well, reinforce the value and the benefits and the results. And this is just one example, but I'm hoping when you look at this, the open the email, read the email, click the button, book the meeting, show up for the meeting. These are all micro commitments throughout a sales cycle. Again, not knowing anything about your business that you need to look at. You need to just think, how am I going to move people along here to be able to get to that end result that I want? So to close this out, for any of you that are interested, if you're here in the States, you can text the word outperform to 38470. I share strategies just like this that will help you achieve peak performance personally and professionally every single week. If you text outperform to 38470, you will immediately be added to the email list where I send that out every single week to you. If it doesn't make sense to text a word to a number, you can just jump on outperformthenorm.com and you can easily get on the email list as well. But to close this out, let me just share a quick case study with you all, and then we'll go to the Q&A. So as far as how this can look, my background way back in the day, just after sports psychology, was actually working with trainers and was working in health club and then management, different things like that. I got contacted by a national health club chain where just happened to be one of their clubs was really underperforming as far as their personal training program went. So went in and we did some group training as well as some individual sales and persuasion performance training with their trainers. And if you implement these things, I told you before, I guarantee it will make you better. And it did, like it always does, because if you get strategic and intentional about these things, it improved their results program wide. Their trainers, I think there were about 15 of them, had an average of 3 sessions per week per trainer that they increased within 90 days. So that's over 10 sessions a month per trainer. And what that resulted in was a 15% plus increase in their top line PT program revenue. So it is just amazing what you can do when you just look at these pillars and when you just tweak these simple things to be able to get better results. And my best keys to success that I can possibly share is that as you look at these things, just use these as a checklist. And if you really want to get the most out of this webinar, go through it and go through these 6 things and strategically and intentionally use them. And go through your sales presentations, go through your website, go through videos and audio and whatever else it is that you offer, PDFs and different things. And just think about, okay, right now, how am I demonstrating social proof? Or right now, how am I perhaps using reciprocity or praising people for the kind of values and beliefs that I know they have? Or how am I making myself more likable by demonstrating empathy? When you get really strategic and intentional with these things and go through and make sure that you're hitting on them at different spots, it's an absolute game changer. It is an absolute game changer, and I promise you it will enhance your sales. So that is all I have for today, and with that I want to open it up for questions. Thank you very much for being here.